I think one misconception about confidence is that people think I'll be more confident when I lose the weight, when I get the degree, when I'm in the relationship, and some condition. And unfortunately, it doesn't work that way.
Welcome back to Talking with Teri TV. I am your host, Teri Cardula, and on today's Business Spotlight, we're speaking to someone who will be delivering a new perspective on how we show up in our business. Are you ready to get inspired? Angela Irwin is an international confidence coach, TEDx speaker, and the founder of Joyful Life Solutions. Welcome, Angela, to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Teri. I'm very excited to be here.
By far, you've come the furthest distance to be on our show. She is coming straight to us from France. I'm so excited that you're here today to share your message, because I was doing some stalking of you. And she's a big deal, okay? So let's get started here. So share with us your story on, your beginnings here.
Okay. Well, I'm from South Dakota, a small, tiny town in South Dakota. I grew up on a farm. And then ended up moving to Colorado after I graduated from high school, or from college. But I started to lose my hearing at the age of 7. And to this day, we still don't know why or what the cause was. And so that very much played a big part of my developmental years, I guess, because I was very alone in that, and over the course of 15 years, slowly lost all of my hearing.
Wow. We were talking off the air when you were, I was talking off air a moment ago, and we were talking about how I blew out my eardrum at one point, and I freaked out, and the doctor was kind of lackadaisical about it. I'm just like, oh yeah. Obviously it grew back, but I had gone without hearing, and so that was like maybe a week's worth of time that I can even somewhat relate to that. But wow, I can't even imagine like losing your entire hearing.
Yeah, it was terrifying, to be honest. And at the beginning, because it is so unusual to just have a hearing loss appear in childhood. It's not something that typically happens. Either you're usually born hearing, or it's genetic, or you have a high fever or something that causes it. And that wasn't the case for me. I already learned how to speak, so they didn't even suspect it. But it was fortunate that my school tested hearing at the beginning of every school year, because in kindergarten it was fine, but in first grade they said, oh, it looks like she has a mild hearing loss. And so my parents were stunned. It's not in my family. And at that point they said, well, it won't get any worse, but we'll just monitor it every year. Well, so each year I would have a test, and it had gotten worse. And so by the time I was in like middle school, the professionals were telling my parents, she's not going to graduate from high school. Don't encourage her to go to college, because by that point she will be completely deaf. My parents didn't know that information got back to me, but I lived in a town of about 1,000 people, and so it did get back to me. And I never told them that I knew that. I just carried that information with me. I was like 10, 11-year-old child. Yeah. So it was very, very terrifying, really, to think, what's going to happen to me? I'm not going to have any sort of a future, really. So yeah, it was pretty scary. So how was that for you growing up with this hearing loss, and how did it shape, your life experience? I think had played a significant part in a number of things. First of all, there was so much shame and embarrassment around that, because I felt so different, and because my parents were taking me, they took me to 5 different states to try to figure out what's going on. And when you repeatedly hear all of these different professionals saying, we've never seen this before in a child, we don't know why this is happening, I internalized that. I'm like, what I heard them say was, you are so flawed and so broken that none of these people can figure out what's wrong with you. So that was sort of the basis of my self-esteem and my, how I felt about myself, which clearly was not good.
Yeah.
But I think going through that experience, it taught me to be more compassionate, more empathetic to people, and wanting to champion the underdog or fight for the underdog, which is really interesting full circle, because that's, serving me very well at the moment.
Yeah. Well, and I think so many people, especially right now in our day and time, like people are being faced with extraordinary issues, circumstances, situations. What has been a kind of a guiding principle for you that has given yourself the strength to overcome this?
I think one thing, and again, this is a direct impact of the hearing loss or losing my hearing, was that it created a sense of urgency in me, because I thought I might not have a future past high school. And so I just had that belief that we have this one life. Like, let's try not to worry about other people's judgments, because they're going to judge us no matter what we do, but we might as well go forward and pursue the things that we want to do in this one life that we have, because it goes so fast as we
know, right?
Oh, yeah.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so when I was watching your TED Talk, which is a fantastic TED Talk, by the way, you touched on this concept that you mentioned about this universal experience of just being different. Like, expand upon that piece of it, because I think that a lot of us can relate, whether we're going through a hearing loss or any other types of challenges and tribulations in our lives, like just being different.
Yeah, absolutely. And that really came out for me when I was doing my life coaching certification, because we would have open discussions as we're learning these skills, and I was so stunned at how many women. So we're in a ballroom, if you will, hotel ballroom, for training with beautiful, smart, talented, successful, accomplished women from around the world. And the stories that kept coming up was, I always felt different. I always felt like I didn't fit in. And I would just was so amazed. And so, yes, my specific story has to do with hearing loss and deafness, but what I learned was that that's such a universal feeling. And I think it's really damaging that, at least like my generation, or we were taught to fit in and be like everyone else, or be like your brother, or be like your sister. And when you don't feel that way, or there is something that you're experiencing on a personal level, we feel very alone and very isolated. And what's actually is so much more beneficial is to understand that as a universal concept. We all have something. And that was such a great eye-opening experience. And like I said, mine is around hearing loss, but it's still relevant to someone else going through something similar. If we can all be a little bit more kind and give ourselves more grace and accept we're not meant to be like anyone else. We are unique. I talk about our fingerprint. We are as unique as our fingerprint. We're not meant to be like anyone else. And I think the sooner that we can sort of embrace that and, like I said, give ourselves some grace, that starts the process of being able to repair and improve the relationship with ourselves.
Yeah. Well, and it's not about fitting in, right? It's about finding your place that you belong. My daughter plays a lot of competitive softball, and it was interesting because we had these two different worlds, and I'm like, wow, I'm trying to fit in here, but I belong here, right? And having that belonging, so finding those people that accept you no matter what, and your weird quirks and silly, things about yourself. And when we start to find the people that accept us, the good, the bad, the ugly, it can really be a game changer, because then we don't have to, quote, fit in. We can just simply belong.
Yeah, that's such a great point. So again, sort of through that process of going through the life coaching certification, I had what I call a crisis of confidence, because we were working through different emotions and stuff, and what happened was all the undealt emotions that I experienced in the 15 years that I was losing my hearing, and we never spoke about it. My parents just weren't equipped to help with the emotional side, and when they asked me if I was fine and I said yes, they took me at face value. So I just stuffed those emotions down. So fast forward a few decades going through this life coaching certification, and she's talking about you got to be visible, and it just brought up all these fears. Specifically what, triggered that was as you lose your hearing, you lose your speech. And so by middle school, when I would meet people for the first time, they would look at me and go, why do you talk like that? And you immediately just go, okay, keep my mouth shut, that's safe. And so here I am going through the certification and all these undealt with emotions, and the idea of I can't go out on social media, that's not, your body remembers those emotions and screaming, that's not safe, that's not safe. So I had to work through all of that, and thankfully I had a wonderful therapist and some great coaches. And so for the first time in my life, I opened up to people and shared what I had thought was my biggest fear, because my whole life I thought if I actually show people the real me and I am vulnerable, because I was sort of the one that people always came to for support. The ironic thing is I'm a really good listener because I have to be. So people would come to me with their problems. And it's great in my field now for life coaching and things. I'm a really excellent listener. But it was very scary because I thought if I really am vulnerable, they're probably going to go, oh, you're not who we thought. And it's actually the opposite happened. People opened up, and then that's when they were like, oh my gosh, I felt this way as well about something completely different, but the feeling is the same. And so the bond actually deepens. The friendships that I had with friends that, from grade school were deepened in our 40s because we were able to really show and be ourselves.
I think we need to repeat that, because that is like such good information there. It's like, so the more that you became more authentic, the more that people were receptive to you, the deeper your relationships. I mean, I want just everyone to know that it's okay to be authentic. It's okay to be your true self, because here's the thing, is you will attract the people that will support you, and you're who you're being will be supported by those people, right? And I think that's so important. And I think right now we're in this time of this transformation, right? And now authenticity is trumping any type of canned or polished, or just people want to know that I can connect with another human. And now with all the technology and AI and all this other stuff, it's like what's real and what's not real. But humans are always going to seek out the juicy nectar of that realness, and that is what we have to offer. And so the more that we can be authentic, like you said, the more powerful our message is.
Yeah, and I think that was even one silver lining of COVID, is people don't want the polished, and they really just want that real connection. And when we were so isolated from each other around the globe, wondering, are we ever going to be able to even be back in person like this? I think people really are just craving that sense of belonging and just, getting rid of the fluff, and let's just connect as our, authentic humanness, like you say, the quirks and the silliness and all of that.
I love it. So I want to bring the audience with us here, because you went through losing all of your hearing, and then around age 22, you had a life-changing experience. Share about that experience and how that impacted everything.
Yeah, it was, I don't know how to describe it, but during that 15 years where it should have felt hopeless, and indeed there were days it did. I was like, oh my gosh, if I had to study for a test, I'd be like, well, what's the point of studying for this test? I have no future anyway. But most of the time, I just kept going forth with some blind faith that this would all work out, and it did. So by the time my hearing really took a dive, I had just finished college, relocated to Colorado, and didn't realize that elevation could impact your hearing. So within about a month of moving to Colorado, my hearing took one last dive, to the point that I was no longer able to understand on the phone anymore. This was like 1996, 97, so pre-email, pre-texting, anything like that. I was working full-time in human resources, and my, part of that was pre-screening candidates for jobs. And I was so terrified I was going to be fired because I could no longer hear on the phone. And I had this angel of a coworker who was doing those pre-screens for me, and I was afraid we were both going to get in trouble. So I thought, all right, I need to find a job that I don't have to communicate with anybody. Well, that was a little difficult at the time.
Yeah.
And so I can remember it just like it was yesterday. It was a company called Mary Maids in Fort Collins, and it was for cleaning offices at night. And I went and interviewed there, and they said they couldn't understand why someone with a 4-year degree was wanting to take a pay cut to come clean offices at night. And I couldn't tell them the real reason, because I thought, well, then they won't hire me over someone else if they think they're going to have to deal with someone with hearing loss and that.
Wow.
So that was pretty much rock bottom. And I had been hearing about this technology called a cochlear implant, but I was not excited about it at all, because over that 15 years of losing my hearing, I had tried hearing aids every summer. And the audiologists would get me excited about it. They said, oh, there's this new technology. We really think this time it's going to work. And every time it would be a disappointment. And so I was coming at it from that perspective. And now you want me to have a surgery? And there was still the counseling around it was, well, we don't know if it's going to work. We can't, there's no guarantees. But you're going to have this surgery, and you might not be able to distinguish between people's voices. Everything might sound computerized. And the biggest fear was you may never recover the ability to use the phone again. And so that was
the
like
fear, yeah.
showing up for my cochlear implant evaluation. I call it my mad at the world phase, because I was like, you got to be kidding me. Like, these are my options. I'm 22. But I really didn't have any other choice. And so I went forward with the technology, and it's just cannot even begin to express the life change. Getting a future back when I thought I didn't have one.
Yeah.
Just opening up this world of possibility. And then, interestingly enough, I went on to work for the company that made my cochlear implants. Their U.S. headquarters happens to be in Denver. And so I ended up going to work, starting out in their human resources department. Spent almost 9 years there working in various roles, got the opportunity to meet so many other cochlear implant recipients around the country and even around the world. And so that just gave me like such a sense of purpose of, okay, that's what all of this was for. I ended up meeting my husband through the company.
I love it.
Ended up, forming these lifelong friendships. I mean, I'm back in Denver for the first time in 7 years, and then just got to spend some time with some friends that I've known for 20 plus years that I've met through it. And I went on to travel around the world and live and work on 3 continents, and all of that is due to this amazing technology. I wouldn't have been able to do it without it.
Wow. All right, this is fantastic. I told you she's a dynamo, right? We're going to take a quick break, and we're going to be right back with Angela Irwin and her transformation. We'll be right back.
Want more support in creating your success story? My products can help. Check them out. First, I have my book, Be the Magic of You, Tools to Transform Your Life. And in it, I have over 70 different tools to help reprogram your brain. Next, I have my Daily Intentions Planners. They help you create without forcing it. They combine brain science and universal laws. In addition to my book and planners, I also have 2 card decks you're sure to love, designed to support you to reconnect with your purpose, power, and potency. I also offer 2 special packages. The first is the Success Package. In it, you'll have my book and a year's supply of planners to help you bundle and save. Next is my favorite, the Empowerment Package. You can supercharge your life and business by getting all the products at one low price. But wait, there's more. I also offer a yearly subscription called the 7-Figure Business Box. Each quarter, you'll receive a physical box mailed to your home, a live 2-hour intensive training, an hour-long fireside chat with an expert in the industry, a guidebook packed with even more resources. To order anything you see here, just go to my website, talkingwithteri.com.
And we're back with Angela Irwin. And so as a confidence coach, you know, you've dedicated your work to really helping women find the confidence and improve their relationships with themselves. What are some key strategies or insights that you like to share with your clients to help them achieve this?
Okay. That's a great question, because that was such a learning for me. I didn't know that we could change the way that we feel about ourselves. And I also learned that the way that we feel about ourselves is formed in childhood. So usually around the ages of 7 or 8. So something that was either told to us, something that happened to us, something that we observed. And at that point, you know, our brains aren't developed enough to even question that. So we just take that beliefs, usually negative, about ourselves on as fact. And unless we have an opportunity at somewhere along our lifetime, those beliefs are sort of guiding the show.
Yeah.
And so what I like to start out with my clients is, let's take a look at what those negative beliefs are, and then we can work on reconfiguring those into something that's actually more truthful, and that's, you know, and I call it sort of engaging your inner defense attorney to squash your inner critic. Because we have all these negative thoughts about ourselves, and if you stop and start to challenge those things, so I have a little tool that I call the 3 C's. So we want to catch the thought, challenge the thought, and then change the thought. Everyone that's ever done that I've done that work with, will come back and say, oh my gosh, I cannot believe how negatively I talk to myself all day long.
Yeah.
And so we want to stop that. We want to quiet down that inner critic. And then also we work on the self-acceptance piece. So like we talked about, being vulnerable, understanding and accepting we're not meant to be like anyone else. And in fact, the things that make us unique are actually our most valuable parts. And then work on building that confidence muscle. And so the main thing is, I don't want anyone to feel as poorly about themselves as I did.
Yeah.
And so that's what's really exciting, is to be able to help women come through that and just see them blossom and gain that confidence. And I think one misconception about confidence is that people think, I'll be more confident when I lose the weight, when I get the degree, when I'm in the relationship, and some condition. And unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. We have to take the action first. So, you know, I say, do it with the legs shaking, and then you go, oh wait, that wasn't so bad. And then you just, you know, again, just take the small steps, and all of a sudden you're like, okay, I can do that. You know, and it really is empowering and exciting to see that happen for people.
And you start to collect that evidence. You start to collect the evidence that starts to, and I encourage people to document the evidence in our evidence journals. Is like when we start to document that, when you're having a day where you're like starting to question yourself, or that self-doubt comes in, or that self-sabotage, you say, no, wait. Here's the evidence. Yep. And it does shift it, because you're like just starting to see like, oh no, I can do that. I can do this.
Exactly.
And you start to build that muscle, and that muscle gets stronger and stronger. And even some of the greatest speakers and the greatest, you know, athletes and the greatest, you know, whatever out there still struggle with that piece, because at every new level there's a new, I like to say, every new level there's a new devil. So right, like you have to go through it, right? And so we're here to evolve, grow, and change. And so in that evolution, you know, we are going to be questioned every step of the way. We are going to be growing that muscle. And so there's no ending point that says, okay, I have confidence now, good. It's going to always evolve, you know?
Yes. And I think that is a huge misconception as well. I mean, I certainly thought that when I went through the first time, and I'm like, okay, great. And then like you say, you go sort of next level, and you're like, how am I back here again? Wait, I thought I went through all of this. But the good news is we learn how to navigate it and manage it much quicker. So you don't stay sort of stuck in that area, like, oh, it's you again. All right, well, let's go. Like you said, get out that confidence, or the evidence journal, and be like, okay, you've done all of this. You can do this. You've got this. I think you mentioned on like some high profile speakers and things like that. I'm a huge Garth Brooks fan. I've seen him in concert like 7 times.
Love it.
I think he's
a great performer.
A genius from a marketing perspective and everything. But I saw he took 20 years off to raise his family, and when he came back, he did not think that anyone would show up. Well, it was like one of the biggest world tours, and but I saw an interview when he was in the middle of that tour, and he said he purposely. Now, consider this man has sold more single albums than Elvis Presley. I mean, like, giant, you know, changed the industry. And he said that he purposely shows up late for his concerts because if he has to wait, he gets into his own head and the negativity starts. And so that's how he navigates and manages that.
Brooks, I mean,
huge international, you know, sells out shows in, you know, 7 seconds, and he's having to put strategies in place because he knows if he has to wait, then he's dead and, you know, in his own head. So he has to come, just go right on stage, don't have time for those negative thoughts.
Which I think is a brilliant strategy, by the way, right? But I think it's also true in the other sense, too, on the other end, because I will sometimes get stagnant on certain things. Like there's one of my signature talks, I do it all the time. Mary hears it all the time. And, but I'm like, gosh, I need to go challenge myself. Right, and so I'll do things like I did stand-up comedy for the first time, and I did a speaking contest to work it because I know that I'm getting too comfortable, and so you can also consciously seek it out too. That's a whole different level. But I'm consciously seeking out, let me get uncomfortable again, because I know that is doing this deeper work because it's overriding that piece of okay, we're in safety mode, right? And so it's always we're here to evolve, and so you can also consciously choose, which when you start to play with that, you're like, well, I obviously chose this, you know? And it's just a different perspective on how to grow yourself, right?
Absolutely.
Powerful stuff. Well, I do want to ask you, if someone is listening to this and they are like, you know what, we're going through the exact same story, is there any words of wisdom that you have for family members on supporting their child or to that child directly that may be going through something similar, or, what would you have liked to have heard on your journey?
That's such a great question. I think it's so important. The communication is so important, and it can feel uncomfortable. Like I said, my parents just weren't equipped to help me with the emotional side. It was the time. I mean, there weren't resources. There wasn't the internet. There weren't other people to seek out. Now that's definitely one of the great things, because the most important thing is that the family and for the child or the adult that might be losing their hearing is you're not alone. And it can feel so isolating, particularly like a hearing loss and deafness. It's an invisible disability. I mean, to this day and age, I still get all the time when I say to people, oh, I'm deaf, I hear with cochlear implants. They look at me and they go, you don't look deaf.
Because there's a look to deafness.
Okay. You don't sound like you're deaf. You talk really well. Okay. So there's still just this misconceptions about what deafness looks like or what hearing loss looks like. And so it can be very isolating because we don't look whatever. So that's the last thing people think of. And, so often if you misunderstand something and you answer wrong, people look at you like you're the dumbest person on the earth. And that just really goes into...
And if you're not catching that
really
fast...
take that on.
Yeah.
And if you don't have someone that you can talk about that with, again, it's like my experience. You take those feelings on, they're going to come out, might be 20 years later, but they're eventually going to have to come to the surface. And so seek out, there are so many hearing loss support groups, there are cochlear implant support groups that you can, all over the country, that you can meet people with. And one of the things that we're doing in my nonprofit organization is having confidence coaching for cochlear implant recipients and people with hearing loss, and even helping the parents through that, because 90% of babies that are born deaf are born to normal hearing parents. So my hearing loss started later, but my parents were no less stunned, even more so, because I had learned how to talk. It's a whole new world. Like, you don't even know, what does this mean? What does this mean for my child, for their future? What is this technology? Again, that's one of the things we're trying to do with the Joyful Life Cochlear Implant Fund, is just raise awareness. because this technology has been around for 40 years, and most people are like, I have never heard of a cochlear implant.
Yeah.
So that's part of what we're trying to do.
And I think it is important to catch it early, because I know I have a close friend and neighbor, and her hearing was significantly going down, and I could see her transformation, and all of a sudden she became isolative. She, in social events, she couldn't hear everything, so she would just, and I was like, why is she being so different with me on one-on-one versus me in a setting? But she was losing, and I'm like, we've got to figure this out, because I can see her like just going down this spiral path. And so there are resources out there that we can take advantage of, and obviously you're one of those resources that people can connect with. Let's speak a little bit about, I want to change gears for a little bit, because I found this really fascinating, and if you know me, you know that I love to see how things work, okay? So as we were sitting here, you were showing us the cochlear implant, and what does that look like? So describe that.
Okay, so there is an internal component that looks like this. So this is courtesy of the manufacturer, Cochlear Americas. So this tiny little component goes down into the snail-shaped part of the ear, the cochlea. So that's for people with hearing loss and deafness like I have. It's the hair cells within the little snail shape are not working. So there's electrodes that get inserted into the snail-shaped part that then take the place of the part of the ear that's not functioning. And so then this bigger part is just placed under the skin. And then there's a magnet under the skin, and then this is the external component. So
so just to be clear, this is the internal part. This is what goes into
surgically
under the skin.
And then there's an external component. So you can see I'm wearing it. Just sits on my ear here, and the magnet sits up here. So it operates on batteries. So you have to have a functioning battery for it to work. And then in this external part, there's also a magnet. So when they connect, the whole process can work. So this external part has a microphone, and this is the main computer. So it's basically programmed for the individual, much like a pair of glasses. It's to your unique hearing needs. But when the magnet comes off, we can't hear at all anymore. So when my magnet comes off, I can't hear anything.
Isn't that fascinating?
And when it's on, then I can hear and live my normal everyday life.
Yeah.
And so on the one side, it is absolutely, like I said, life-changing technology. But kind of the downside is we're so dependent on it that if it goes out, if the external component it stops working for any reason, and I liken it to smartphone technology. The external component is going to need to be repaired, replaced, and upgraded across someone's lifetime. And a lot of times people don't realize that there's going to be this ongoing cost.
Yeah.
And that was really the genesis for me starting the Joyful Life Cochlear Implant Fund, because when I moved to France, I was surprised and relieved to discover that my government health insurance reimburses me for all these costs. So a $250 rechargeable battery that is absolutely critical for me to be able to hear, I get reimbursed when I need it. Or if the whole system, which costs about $12,000, needs to be upgraded, I get that reimbursed. But I knew, because I had worked for the manufacturer and had so many cochlear implant recipient friends here in the US, I knew that that was already an issue. And so when I would get upgraded in France, I was sending spare parts back to my friends here. And so I already knew that that was a challenge before COVID, but then when COVID hit, I just couldn't shake the feeling that people are really going to be in trouble, not being able to afford to keep their hearing. Yeah. And that is just, to me, it's just like people losing their hearing a second time. It's just,
especially if you've had it and now it's gone.
Exactly. So that's why we started the Joyful Life Cochlear Implant Fund, so that prevent people from losing their hearing a second time. And until the insurance companies in the US, some of them will cover it, but a lot of them do not. And people just don't have the funds to be able to keep these devices working. But it's just has such an impact. Like I said, it impacts every aspect of our life. If mine goes out, I can't work. I can't do my calls with my clients. I can't come and speak to you. There's safety implications, obviously, as well. You can't hear sirens. You can't hear traffic in the street. All of those sorts of things. And then, like you mentioned with your friend, the social isolation.
Yeah.
So if you can't hear and it's really difficult to communicate, you just isolate. And that takes a toll on your mental health. And so it just really impacts every aspect of a person's life.
So your nonprofit, the Joyful Life Cochlear Implant Fund, is designed to help support people getting the batteries, maintaining and the batteries and the parts that is required. This is a fantastic organization. Where can people connect? Where can people donate? Where can people get involved in this nonprofit?
So thank you for the opportunity. So the best place to connect with me would be to go to our website, and it is the abbreviation, so it's jlcif.org. So jlcif.org stands for Joyful Life Cochlear Implant Fund. You can come on to our website and see what we're doing. You can apply if anybody needs support to keep their hearing stable. They can apply there. You can apply for the confidence coaching there. And certainly if you're able to donate, that would be amazing. Surprisingly, we are the only nonprofit in the whole U.S. that's helping with these aftercare costs. There are several nonprofits that help get the surgical part covered, and Medicare and Medicaid cover the surgical part, but sometimes those very same insurance companies won't pay for the $250 battery, the rest of the upkeep, without which it's useless. So.
All right, well, we can do better in the U.S., okay? Come on. All right, so this has been absolutely delightful. You're just such a breath of fresh air and such a light. I want people to connect with you. So the same website that they can connect with you for confidence coaching as well. Thank you so much for being here today and being with us on this show. And again, reach out, connect with her, collaborate with her, and I know that we can do some great things together.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the wonderful opportunity to be here.
Thank you, thank you. And as always, be bold, be brave, be fearless, be the magic of you. Massive love to all of you, and I will see you on the next Business Spotlight. Thank you for joining me today. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Make sure you hit that notification bell to find out about my upcoming shows. Thank you for tuning in today, and I'll see you next time.